For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Sorry we've been MIA last week, but I was dealing with some computer issues, you know, all the typical random BS that you got to deal with when dealing with the podcast. Your computer decides it wants to crash on you, and it's just, you got to roll with the punches on those. But we are back. We have a really cool special guest with us here today. We have Matt Fawcett coming to us from not Fort Wayne, Indiana, but I'm not going to butcher. Where are you at specifically in Indiana?
South Whitley, Indiana.
Okay, gotcha. So coming from us from South Whitley, Indiana, and so really excited to have you on and chat with you. You got a new single dropping here. It's kind of funny because this feels like this podcast has been in the works for, what would you say, about 2 months at this point?
Yeah, probably about that long, yeah.
We've been going back and forth, and but actually it just kind of seemed to work out really well because you got a new single dropping this weekend, and we happened to just be able to get you on. I don't know why I kept trying to get you on Sundays, but, you know, that's just seemed to be what I always had free. So, but we got you here tonight, and I'm really excited to chat. So you're currently based in Indiana, but you're originally from Ohio, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I was born and raised in a small town called Cedarville, Ohio, which is about an hour from Columbus and an hour from Cincinnati, right near like Dayton, Ohio.
Okay. Well, I'm going to trip you out again. My dad used to work for a freight airline that was based out of Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, no chance.
We never lived in Dayton because it was one of those things where he only worked like 10 to 14 days a month, so it was just like Dayton from South Chicago isn't that terrible of a drive. But yeah, he worked for a company called Emory Air Freight.
Okay, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so just it's kind of funny just how things are starting to connect here a little bit. So what was it like growing up in Ohio, Southern Ohio there?
That was interesting. So it was a really, really small town. So it was definitely a town that everybody wanted to, well, not necessarily wanted to be from, but everybody was always looking outside and trying to figure out what they were going to do in order to leave. Which is kind of crazy because I mean, I don't live there now anymore, but I absolutely love small towns, and I love the vibe of being able to know where everybody lives. And it's just interesting because even driving back and showing my kids where I grew up, like it's funny to be like, oh yeah, that's where so-and-so lived and so-and-so lived. Like, wow, like I knew the grand majority of where everybody in this small town lived.
Yeah.
Which at the time seemed more like walls that everybody was trying to get out of. But now seems kind of oddly really welcoming to be able to go back to every once in a while.
Yeah. It's, you know, also being from, like I say I'm from South Chicago, but it's just because if I tell people where I'm really from, it's like nobody knows. So it's just like, it's a lot easier. I'm sure you've been in situations where it's like, yeah, I'm pretty much from Cincinnati or Columbus or whatever is most convenient for you. And so I just say, oh, I'm from Chicago, and nobody really questions it until you meet somebody from Chicago and they're like, oh, where'd you grow up? And oh, I grew up in Chicago Heights. That's not Chicago. What are you talking about? So, but it is kind of interesting growing up in a small town, kind of knowing the layout, and then, you know, knowing a lot of people that are there. It's like, oh, that's where the Olsons live, or, you know, like whatever the scenario is. And then you go back 10 years later after not being there, and there's certain people that are still there that just never left. But then you start noticing all the changes that happened, where it's like, oh, wait, we used to go buy candy from this store right here. Why is this a hair salon? You know, like whatever. So it just growing up in a small town like that is very interesting. And like you said, it's oddly satisfying going back and just kind of it still feels like home, even though it's in some cases probably completely different. But unlike your scenario where everybody was trying to plot on getting out and moving on to other places, it seemed like everybody where I grew up, it was, how do we stay here? How do we, but that's just an interesting thing. So growing up in the small town, how does music kind of come into your life as far as wanting to play, listen, like just however you want to interpret the question, how does music kind of enter your life?
So I grew up, my mom wanted all of us, me and my three sisters, to learn how to play piano. So she paid, my dad, my mom paid for us all to have piano lessons. So we would almost draw straws to figure out who was going to do the lesson first. And it was mostly whoever like actually practiced that week would go first. And then everybody else would like try to grab their books real quick and like cram or whatever to do the piano lesson. But that was really how I got started with music, was piano lessons. I was in the high school marching band and concert band. And I mean, basically if you're in my small town and you were in band, you were in all of them. So you were in pep band, you were in concert band, marching band, the jazz band. Like you learned an instrument and you figure out a million different ways to play it. So that was kind of my start, was just playing piano. I hated it. I took 7 years of lessons and I despised it at the time. And I still apologize every time I see my piano teacher at random times, like, sorry for being just a horrible student. It's like, because now I wish I could actually play piano better. I'm a total hack when it comes to playing piano, because guitar is my main instrument. But that was really where I got my start.
Cool. And so it was one of those scenarios where just kind of growing up and doing more of a traditional education in music, where you have a music teacher, they teach you, you go through the, like you'd mentioned, the concert band or the jazz band or the, like whatever the school has to offer. So going through that process, where does kind of discovering to write your own music kind of come into play?
So it's kind of cool. My piano teacher was really good about trying to cultivate us as kids as far as just doing what we were interested in. And like I said, I was not really interested in the piano, but I loved writing poetry. So I would sit down and I'd write all these poetry. And I used to play a game in my head when we were driving around listening to music. And I would try to guess the next lyric, especially at the end of the line, because we listened to a lot of like country music or contemporary Christian stuff. So there were a lot of end rhymes in those songs. So I would always try to guess. And it was funny because sometimes I'd get it right and other times I'd get it wrong. But then I would wonder, like, why in the world did they choose that word? Like, this one totally fits better. So playing those games, and since I was doing poetry stuff on the side, my piano teacher realized that, I really wanted to play guitar. My parents got me a guitar and I started playing that. And she's like, well, what if we kind of match the two up to where we can, I can help you learn how to put lyrics or basically music or chords to your lyrics. So we would take a song and she would help me kind of basically like put music to it. And I think she really only helped me like with maybe one or two. And then since then, like once I took the guitar on, my parents gave it to me on my 11th birthday, and I took, I think maybe one or two lessons from guys that were literally just trying to help me figure out like a couple of simple little tricks and that sort of thing. But the rest is all self-taught as far as guitar, because I just really wanted to play that instrument. So after she kind of showed me like how to put chords and, to lyrics or whatever, it was just kind of like, okay, cool. Well, I know chords on guitar, so I'm just going to keep doing this do it a lot more. And it just kind of took off from there.
Nice. And so that was kind of what you're doing through school, like grade school and then into high school, was doing the school programs, but then also kind of playing with your own music as far as like writing and all that fun stuff. Going through that, who are some of the, like creatively speaking, who are some of the influences for you?
Biggest influence for me was a mixture of contemporary Christian artists and country artists. So like Garth Brooks, Clinton Black, Steve Green, Chris Tomlin, even like David Crowder, George Strait, a lot of just really good classic country music. And even like there's people that I don't even know who they were as far as artists. My dad had a record collection, and there was one record that was literally like, I think it was called like 18-wheeler songs. It was just old trucking music. So we'd listen to that stuff a ton. And I just loved the storytelling aspect, especially of like country music. That was like the biggest thing that I took away, at least from the country music aspect of it. And I absolutely loved it.
Nice. That's awesome. You had one of those compilation albums that just didn't have any of the information. And it's like, oh, play number 6 from this. Yeah. Or whatever, whatever it is. So that's cool. And so then how do you kind of go from Ohio to North? Well, is it northern Indiana? It's more like central Indiana.
Yeah.
North,
Yeah. So I was leading worship at church all throughout high school and then into college. After college, I actually moved to southern Ohio for 2 years. Worked at a Christian camp there, where I got married, and my wife and I were trying to figure out what we could. Like the bills just weren't lining up. We love camp ministry, but it wasn't something that we were going to be able to do full time. Yeah. She was still in school, and she had 2 more years left of college. Yeah. And so I actually got a job. I applied to work at Sweetwater in Fort Wayne. And so that's where we moved up here to Fort Wayne. That's where I worked for almost 8 years before I left. A year ago, to pursue just doing music full time. Yes.
Sweetwater, that's like the best of both worlds right there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. There were a lot of people I met because of that job, which was really cool.
Nice. It was only recently that I just realized that Sweetwater was based out of Indiana. Like,
oh, really?
For whatever reason, for the longest time, I thought Sweetwater was just based out of Sweetwater, Texas. To me, it made sense. And then I think it was about 2 years ago, I was talking to my sound engineer that helped, like when we're doing like bigger productions and whatnot, he'll come out and help me. He was like, no, man, it's like not far from where you grew up. And I'm like, oh, whoa, dang, that's, I guess I should have known that. So, no, that's cool. Ed, so you've been doing music full time now for about 2 years, or how long have you been doing music full time now?
Full time for a little over a year. Okay. And of course, like I was doing a lot of it always on like just a part-time basis. So I've been doing a ton of gigs and that sort of thing, but it just got to a point where it's like, if I'm going to go after it, I got to jump in with both feet.
And how much did the pandemic have to play in with that?
As far as like jumping on, I think a lot of it just made me realize like how much I love being able to play music and connect with people through music. And I think the pandemic really helped play a role in where it was just like, like if I really feel like this is what I want to do with my life, it's no better time than to jump with it right now. Because I think like we only get a chance to live once, and I mean that's kind of cliche to say that, but even when I was doing the camp job for 2 years after college, my desire even when I was there was to keep doing more stuff with music. And I left there to go to Sweetwater to do music and the job at Sweetwater, and just over the years just realized like at some point in time the level of music career that I wanted to have just had to be full-time focus. And I think the pandemic just kind of made me realize like there's a deeper calling, if you want to say that, or a deeper connection with people that you can have through just focusing on trying to serve and love your fans the best that you possibly can. And I can't do that and be a good dad and a good husband and have a full-time job. So
yeah, 100% agree. I've been having that realization over the last like 6 months or so myself, and it's kind of getting to that point now where it's like, do I want to make this thing that I call Live and Amplified a full-time career and make it like as good as it can be, or is it just going to be a hobby that I do on the side? Because like, yeah, I'm 35 years old now, so it's just kind of getting to that point where I don't have the same energy I did 5 years ago, where it's like, oh, I'm going to go work a 9 to 5 job, work 8 to 10 hours a day, and then I'm going to come home and stay up until 2 a.m. editing or recording or whatever we're doing. The energy's just not there. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunate, but maybe I should get myself into a gym or something. But so it's just kind of getting to that point now where I think everybody just creatively kind of gets to that point where it's like you got to make that decision. And luckily, I think for me, the decision will kind of always, like, no matter what I decide, I can kind of revert to go the other way at any point, and it's not going to be that huge of a blow. But
Yeah.
so you've been doing music full time now for about a year. What's been like? I know we mentioned that you got a new single coming out here in a couple days, but what have you been doing differently for the last year?
Yeah, I think the main majority was actually, I mean, treating it like a business. Because you're right, like the hobby thing is easy to do because it's like, when you got time available, like go for it, sweet.
Yeah.
When it turns into your full-time gig, it's like, oh shoot, like 40 hours a week needs to be, focused
40.
on doing this or whatever it is. And so I've been trying to focus more on trying to make sure that I've got systems in place to be able to connect with as many people as I can. It's just being an independent musician is really, really interesting with the state that we live in right now with social media, with trying to be able to connect with people because it's a very loud world. And so trying to present anything out there that's not screaming at somebody is just really hard to do. So trying to figure out using ads and emails and being able to connect with people on a level that's like, hey, like I think you'd be interested in this, but trying to do it in a suggestive way where it's actually like helping people. So it's almost just been trying to go back and really doing a lot of soul searching on like what is the purpose behind why I do music. Because if it's just for my own edification and my own self personal stuff, we're great, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's going to pay me to do it at that point in time. It's got to be about the people that I'm actually like writing the music for. So a lot of it's been trying to book gigs, trying to write new music, and really build up an infrastructure behind it all to make sure that it can still like sustain and build things up. And when I left my full-time job, my wife and I knew that we had a pretty good on-ramp to be able to spend some time really kind of getting the nuts and bolts all figured out with the business side of it to make sure that it would still like drive and be sustainable. And it's kind of crazy because every single day there's like two opposing feelings. One's feeling like this isn't going to work and I don't know what I'm doing. And the other one's like, it's just like everything's starting to fall into place. And it's just balancing those two perceptions of this is falling to pieces and all the pieces are falling in the right spot and making sure that you're not listening. If you listen to everything's falling into pieces too much, you get lazy and like, oh, it's just going to all fall into place. Or if you listen to it's falling apart too much, then you end up like just getting depressed and be like, all right, well, I'll just quit and do something else. So trying to hold both of those things in line and make sure that you're always striving forward to make sure everything falls together.
Having also go through that internal dilemma on a daily basis, do I move forward or do I just give up and go back to what's comfortable? The one thing that's always kind of stuck in the back of my head, this is going to sound a very odd comparison, but back when I was going to community college in South Chicago, I went to a community college, and in my spare time, I was a janitor at a bowling alley. And there was one night I was just kind of hanging out with a couple of buddies, and this one guy saw this girl that he really liked or really thought was interesting and wanted to go talk to her, but he was too scared to go talk to her. And the other buddy was like, you know what? You're going to go talk to her because if you don't, you know exactly what's going to happen tonight. But if you go talk to her, you have no clue what's going to happen. It could be that could be the love of your life right there, you know?
Yep.
And at the time I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to look at things. Cause like, I mean, I'd not really gone anywhere at that point. I'd never left like a 20-mile radius of my hometown at that point. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, that's a really interesting way to look at it. And that's just kind of always stuck at me when I'm sitting here like, man, I think I'm going to just kind of wrap it up. And I was like, so now in my head, it's like, if I wrap it up, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to go to work, and then tomorrow I'm going to go to work, and then, and that's just what my life will be. Whereas if
Yep.
I keep going with this, you don't know what's going to happen. So it keeps life exciting. So,
Oh yeah. Well, and honestly, that was one of the main thoughts of me leaving the full-time job was that question of, are we okay if we know that, like, if this is the best that it's going to get, are we okay with that? And
yeah.
I realized, like, no, I'm not. Like, I really want to do something else.
Yeah.
I want to do something more, and I think that I can. And I was like, then why would I keep doing the same thing?
Yeah.
So, but honestly, your friend's brilliant. Like, that's a great question, because a lot of times it's so easy to choose what is most comfortable and what's known, because the unknown is so scary, because it could be something better or it could be something worse. But most of the time, it's going to be something way better than we could ever think.
Yeah. And it's just one of those moments because it's like we had all been drinking probably a little bit more than we probably should have been at that point, because we're all like 21, stupid, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like this brilliant epiphany of a moment. And it's just like, wow, I can't believe we just had this conversation. That's crazy.
Right.
Oh, but anyway, so I really do applaud you for taking that leap, especially with having kids and like family and like responsibilities, that if this doesn't work out, like you've got other people depending on you. Whereas, a lot of people, they probably wouldn't take that, but you believe so much in your music and what you're doing, and just wanting to have that fulfillment, that's just amazing. And I applaud you for making that decision.
Well, thanks.
So, we've been talking about this new single that you got coming out on, was it Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yep.
when the first?
Saturday.
I can't believe it's almost August 1st or October 1st. Holy cow!
I know.
I just
It's
saw.
been flying.
What's wild is every time I go to the store, they've got like different holidays out, and it's like they had Halloween candy out since August, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I went to the store today, and they got Christmas stuff out, and I'm like, it's not even Halloween yet. What's going on right now? So you got this new single coming out, Sing Along. What's kind of the story behind this song?
So I had this thought a long time ago about how everybody has their own story. We're all walking, life in the way that we see most fit. And every single song that I've ever heard is depicting some sort of story. And it goes back to listening to country music and loving the story aspect of it. And so taking those two things and just realizing, like, well, if everybody has a story, then everybody, really is like living out a song. And a lot of it comes to like the idea of like, what is a true friend? Somebody that walks with you both, because a lot of times, we think of friendship and we think of, buddies we'll go hang out with when the times are good and just hanging and chilling, that sort of thing. But I think the definition of like a true friend is somebody who, will look at times of pain, hurt, and discomfort and still choose to walk with somebody through that. And so that's what Sing Along is really about, is the fact that, there are times of joy and there's times of pain, but instead of just, I don't want to say like just judging everybody, but instead of looking at everybody's life as just, oh, well, I wish everybody understood me, trying to look at other people and trying to understand them. And instead of just, acknowledging that like, oh yeah, everybody has a story. What if we were to actually like sing along with their story for a little bit, and actually come alongside people? So like the bridge is, let me dance with you, let me cry with you, let me sing together with you. And I think a lot of that came from, some of the stuff even with the pandemic, or realizing that like if we truly as humans believe that, we have to do life together on some level. If we stop looking at each other as the enemy and realize that, we're all different, and that's okay. Our differences shouldn't divide us. They should be what allow us to see that there's, beauty in every single person, and actually be able to sing together. I think we can actually make a more beautiful song when we don't try to make everybody assimilate necessarily just to us, but can, allow our differences to actually be able to create something beautiful together.
That's awesome. And is this a song that you'll play like at shows, or is this a brand new song nobody's heard?
It is a brand new song. There's been a handful of select people that have heard it, as far as playing it live. I've snuck it into a couple of different shows here and there. Some of the shows were like more background music stuff. So every once in a while, I'll throw a song that I'm working on in there just to see if I can gauge people's reaction off of it.
That's cool.
So, but yeah, the production of it and everything else will be brand new that nobody's ever heard. So
nice. And how long have you been sitting on the song, as far as like from the initial idea to now the release?
I'm trying to remember, because I use like Apple Notes to write down a bunch of stuff. I don't remember when the initial note was written. It may have been 2 or 3 years ago, but I know when I actually wrote the rest of the song was actually right in the middle of the pandemic, because I was just scrolling through the notes looking at stuff that I'd written before, and I found that, and I was like, I think we need this song right now. Nice. Which is funny, because when I wrote it, I was like, oh, this would be great to release now. And I just kept sitting on it and sitting on it. Then ended up working with a producer named Abel Soto from Texas. Nice. And he was the guy that he asked me, he's like, well, what song do you want to work on? I was like, well, here's, 3 that I'm looking at. He's like, let's do this one. So I was just kind of waiting for the right person to do it with, to make sure that it was going to hit the way that I wanted it to. And it ended up coming to sound more of like an anthem, which was initially, that's kind of the idea that I wanted to go for, was something that, not only is the idea and the lyrics about singing along, like I wanted people to legitimately be able to sing along with it.
Gotcha. And so you've been working on this song for a good minute. What's a typical recording session like for you? Are you going in Indiana there, or are you going down to like Nashville or out here to Texas? Since you mentioned the guy you worked with was from Texas.
Yeah, so this one was a little different. Usually I would go in the studio, and if there's so I've done a lot of self-produced stuff. If I'm doing self-produced stuff, I'll do all that at my house, and then I'll have friends, after I kind of build out the drums and the vocal lines and guitars, I'll have friends who will play bass and then overdub drums, and then sometimes play some other color instruments too. For this one, which was kind of interesting, I was a part of a lot of the recording sessions via Zoom. Okay. And then he basically built out the music bed, and then what we did was we actually just Zoomed each other, and I recorded the vocals here at my house while he was on the Zoom phone call, coaching me through it. And then once we kind of finished out the session and had everything recorded, I just sent him the files. He dropped it into his session and then finished everything out. So it was much different, but it was actually kind of crazy. And with COVID and everything else of everybody being separated, it kind of seems kind of fitting that we ended up doing the grand majority of it over Zoom. So
yeah, for sure. And so it drops on Saturday, October 1st. With this is your first release this year, right? Spotify wasn't misleading me?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah, this will be the first one this year.
Okay. You'd be surprised how many times Spotify misleads me, and it's just like, oh no, I've got this and this, and it's under my, whatever. So what's kind of going through your mind now as you're kind of approaching this finish line of getting Sing Along out there? I actually was thinking about that a lot today, as
because a lot of times what happens is an artist will put a single out or they'll put a record out, and then it's all about pushing afterwards and letting people know like it's still out there. And I was like, it's on some level, like that needs to happen. But really, like the whole idea of sing along is to start to listen. So I'm just really, really curious, and I want to have some more times where people can just listen to it and then just tell me what they think. And or like tell me what it means to them. So I'm trying to plan out some different connecting points, whether that be on Facebook or Instagram, and just going live and just having moments where people can jump on and just say like, hey, I listened to the song and this is what it meant to me, or this is, my story. Because it really is about people sharing their stories. The album artwork is, the story in of itself. I literally just emailed my fan base and was like, hey, if you trust me and you're okay with this, send me a picture of yourself. You have 2 days, and I got something special to show you in 2 days. Nice. And I had a bunch of people that sent me their pictures. And so the whole album artwork is a mosaic of all those fans that trusted me with their faces to be able to make the album art. And so it really is just kind of sitting back and saying, okay, like it's out there now, let me know your story. Like, what are you walking through? What's going on right now? And how can we sing along with, your story?
For sure. That's really cool. That was one of the first things that I noticed when I was kind of prepping for the interview. I was going through your Facebook and I saw I don't think it was the album art. It was like your header on Facebook or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I was like, that's really cool. And I saw somebody comment, oh, I could see myself. And I was like, that's amazing, because there's no way I'd be able to find myself in that. But did you make that yourself, or did you have a friend help out with that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the website was, but I found a website that would actually allow you to basically just put in a ton of pictures. Nice. And then put in the main picture of what you wanted the mosaic to be. And then they would basically like put it all together and make sure everything matched and fit together. And there were some design elements that you could just decide how much they changed different photos to match the main photo and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was kind of crazy, because it was one of those things that I wanted to include people as much as possible. But at the same time, I was like, I need to get this album artwork done so I can get it up through Spotify and do all the release and everything else. I was like, shoot, I got 2 days and I need to show people this. So I was like, well, all right, we'll see how many people respond. And I was blown away there were hundreds of people who responded to it. It was insane.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I love it so much. So kind of moving forward now, what's the plan after this single? Is it leading to an album? Are you doing singles? What's kind of the plan moving forward?
So the plan moving forward is this will be one of the singles off the next album. Okay. So there will be an album that's coming out towards the end of this year that will have sing along on it. And I'm really excited for it, because I think the theme of sing along, as far as doing life with people, bleeds into a lot of the other songs that are going to be on the record. One of them that I'm super, super pumped about, called Run, is just about running towards people's disasters, and whether or not we're willing to do that for people. And I'm really pumped, because I think now more than ever, like not that the other songs that I've written haven't meant as much to me, but I feel like these songs are songs that are bleeding out of me instead of ones that I'm having to like pull out. So it's just really, really cool.
So is it fair to say these songs you feel are a lot more authentic versus where previous songs you were kind of forcing, because it's like, oh, I need to get something out, let's force this, whereas everything right now is just a lot more authentic?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more authentic. And I think a lot of the other songs that I've done, I like them, but it was almost like I put myself too much in a box to where I was like, oh, I need to do this, or like for some reason, like this makes sense, and now a lot of the songs that I'm writing are just, they feel like it's just my autobiography on a page of just, hey, like, how do we care and love for people better? And what are some, real stories that hit home for me that I think that other people need to be able to hear and sing along with. So yeah, it's definitely, and I think a lot of that comes into just a lot of the discovery that I've been doing over the last year of who am I as an artist, and am I really worth doing this full time for people? Because it's easy to for any creative to say that, well, anybody could do this, or it's not really worth that much.
Yeah.
But I think when you truly believe in yourself and believe that you were created and designed to do this specific thing, it kind of changes the confidence level in what you're doing. Whereas like somebody who's drawing isn't going to be as nervous about putting a pen to a paper. It's just like, nope, like I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm going to be intentional with it, but I'm not going to be scared about making mistakes, because the mistakes are kind of what make it unique and its own unique thing.
That's cool. That's really cool. And I do want to say that I really like, having not watched all your videos that you have out on YouTube. I really appreciate that you're kind of documenting your journey through, like with the, I'd consider them vlogs. They're more you talking into camera, but I guess that's technically what vlogging is anymore. So, and just kind of documenting your journey. That's really cool. Just, so just kind of moving forward, you're working towards the album. Do you have a release date for it yet, or?
I don't have a release date for it yet. My ideal would be to release it end of November. Okay. But we'll see. That one's definitely in pencil at the moment.
Yeah, I feel it. It's always so funny whenever I ask that question, whenever people say, "Oh, we're working towards the album," it'll be like, "Okay, do you have a release date for it yet?" It's either a lot sooner than I anticipate, or it's like, "Oh, we're talking like May of 2023," and it's like, and you're releasing the first single now. People are gonna forget about the album,
right?
So it's always just this interesting, like, November, that feels a little soon, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, But then again, I didn't realize that it was almost October 1st. So
right.
Who am I? But no, that's cool. I'm really excited to see that you're getting music out there, and sing along. It's going to be great. I'm really excited to see the reaction of that, or reaction from people that haven't heard it yet. We'll definitely help you as much as we can get the song out there once it's released. That's one of the really exciting parts of what we do here at Live and Amplified, is just helping people get their music out there and just promote it as much as we can, all that fun stuff. But outside of music, like I know you'd kind of mentioned you're really big in church and stuff of that nature, but when you need to kind of escape from everything and just kind of take some Matt Fawcett time alone, get away from everybody, what are some of your hobbies? What do you do to decompress?
Yeah, so I absolutely love disc golf. I don't get to do it as much as I want to, but as far as like decompressing and just enjoying space and time,
nice.
If I can find a couple of buddies just to go and throw a disc around, like
nice.
That is the best.
Nice.
So that's one of the biggest ones. I also enjoy reading. I have probably way too many books in my house currently. Some of which I've only read once, and some of them I haven't even touched yet. So,
Hey, at least you're reading. Like that's one thing that I wish I'd do more of, is read. But it's
Well, it's funny to me. I hated reading as a kid. Like it was something I would not touch, and in fact, all throughout college, it was like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And then I got outside of college, it was like, wait, I can do this, and nobody's telling me to.
Yeah.
Okay, shoot, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And now I read a ton. So.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't like the silence. Like just the silence it requires for me to read. I don't like it. I don't like, unless I'm like dead tired, and maybe I should start reading when I'm dead tired, because I kind of enjoy the silence. But I don't know, for whatever reason, whenever I try to sit down and read, I'll get to like a couple of pages, and then it's like, all right, I've already forgot what I just read. So
yeah, yep. Yeah, that's the always dangerous part.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up disc golf. I never realized how big that actually was. Like
Yeah.
one of the guys I worked with, he recently left a couple of months ago, but he used to play disc golf all the time. He'd tell me like, "Oh yeah, we're over here at, whatever park. We're playing disc golf." And I'm like, "Nice, that's cool." And then like a couple days later, I was driving home from work and there was a big trailer next to me. There was like a pro disc golf player that was in town because there was like some tournament that was coming through Texas. And I'm like, wait a minute, when did disc golf become big? Because it was always just like this thing when I was growing up, there'd be like disc golf courses around the parks that we'd go hang out at. And I'm like, oh, that's like something that the college kids play or something, whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, holy cow, that's a big thing that people do. That's
Yep.
wild.
Well, it is funny. It's funny to me that I didn't know for a long time that there was a professional like league, but I guess like pretty much anything now you can find a way to get sponsors and have professionals in. But yeah, we played it and we're like, oh, we're getting pretty good. And then we found out there were professionals, and then we watched a couple of YouTube videos. Like, oh yeah, we're not that good.
Yeah, that's funny. So what's the so you're in South Whitney. What's the music scene like there? Are you having to go down to like indie, or is there a pretty happening scene around Fort Wayne?
There's a pretty decent scene in Fort Wayne. Most of the gigs that I've done have either been in churches or like wineries or breweries. There's a pretty good winery scene kind of in and around like the Fort Wayne, Warsaw area.
Okay.
And a lot of that, I mean, it's a cool venue to play just because people are there just to kind of chill and hang out. It's a little bit more forgiving than some like the bar and club music scenes, just because you'll get people who are paying a little bit more attention, especially if you're not doing just like rock or metal music. So it's a pretty decent scene. I still do a lot of gigs over in Ohio.
Okay.
Just because of different connections there. I was like this last weekend, I was up in Michigan too.
Nice.
So yeah, I ended up, on Friday night was in Michigan and playing a retreat, a men's retreat. So played that Friday night, Saturday morning, and then drove to Indiana, played a show, and then went back up and finished the rest of the weekend off at the retreat. This was a busy weekend, but
nice. Michigan's actually kind of a cool, like, especially during the summer, if you're staying in like southern Michigan, it's actually, there's some really cool spots there just in general if you enjoy being outdoors and, just kind of being able to relax.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
always one of my favorite places to go as a kid because it wasn't that far. You could go up into like Michigan City and then go out a little bit further east, and just it wasn't ungodly hot, but
yeah.
So yeah, it's like just growing up in that area was always an interesting time. Like you had the super hot summers, but if you go a little bit further north, it was never really that bad.
Yep.
So.
Oh yeah.
But I don't want to keep you too much longer. But we have a fun game that we play with everybody that comes on.
Sweet.
It's called Rapid Fire Randomness. I have a random question generator sitting right here on my phone. Fun little app that I found. And I'm going to just fire off, say, like 10 random questions, and you just kind of answer them as quickly as you can.
Okay. Sounds good.
So if you're ready, here we go. We got Rapid Fire Randomness. What is the earliest birthday you remember?
5.
Do you remember why?
It was the first time we had a birthday party.
Okay. What would the U.S. be like if it was invaded by aliens?
Ooh. My guess would be that the aliens would probably look at how crazy we are, and instead of trying to harness that craziness, they would probably try to just find... They would probably take over Florida, just so that they can get the beaches and make all of us move up north to where, we have to farm a whole lot more just to feed them. And then they'd probably get sick and tired of us complaining and eventually just be like, all right, peace, yo, we're out of here, and then leave.
We're good. Nice. That's fun. What instantly makes you gain respect for someone?
Honesty. If somebody will go out of their way to be honest, even if they don't have to.
If you could choose one thing to be really good at, what would it be? Besides music, let's not play that game.
Earning people's trust in relationship.
Nice. Who are 4 people that you've never had a chance to meet that you'd really like to?
Garth Brooks, George Strait. Well, this would be somebody who's passed away already, but Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Mm-hmm. And Brian, or that's not his real name. Paul Walker.
Okay. Nice. Oh, you were about to say Brian O'Connor.
Yeah, I was like, wait, like, no, that's not his real name. I can't use that.
It's so funny when you have an actor that's synonymously known as one thing, and it's like, nope, that's not his real name, though. What's the longest you've gone without sleep, and what's the story behind it?
Longest was probably 2.5 days.
Okay.
I think. And the story behind it was I worked all day, 9 to 5 job, and then I drove through the night to Nashville to be at a conference all day because I had one day off that week. It was on a Wednesday. So I worked all day Tuesday, drove through the night Tuesday night, got there on Wednesday, went through the conference all day on Wednesday, drove back through the night Wednesday night, and then worked all day Thursday before I went to bed Thursday night.
Nice. That's a solid one. Would you rather be a background dancer on stage that falls flat on his face, or a stand-up comedian that tells jokes that nobody laughs at?
Probably flat on my face, because that's something that happens once, and I feel like if you're a stand-up comedian that nobody laughs at, that's going to be at least a 45-minute bit that you're not going to be able to get out of.
Well, I kind of like where your head's at on that one, because if you're a background dancer and you fall flat on your face, chances are not that as many people are going to notice because you're a background dancer.
Right.
Whereas if you're a comedian that nobody's laughing at your jokes, that does irreparable damage. Like, it's going to take you more than that 45 minutes to crawl back out of that.
Yeah, and that's literally your job.
Yeah, right. What do you know enough about to be dangerous, but not enough to be an expert?
Ooh, probably 12-volt wiring in the vehicle, because I'm redoing a bus right now, and I know enough to make sure I don't get shocked, but not enough to where I probably would be the safest person in the world.
Mm-hmm. So, in the confines of the movie Groundhog Day, where he had to relive the same day over and over again, what day would you choose to be your Groundhog Day?
Goodness. Probably the day that I got to open for 10th Avenue North. Okay. And the only reason why I say that is because I was going to say my wedding day, but my wedding day would be pretty awesome. But I feel like I know and love my wife so much more now that it's like licking the icing of a cake, and knowing full well, like, after having lived multiple years with my wife, that there's so much more to be enjoyed. That I feel like that would just be frustrating to a point. But
nice. And speaking of your wife, what is something your wife takes way too seriously?
She's gonna kill me for this. Card making, but I love her for it.
Like greeting cards, like Mr. Deeds.
Yeah, like she will spend hours making these 3-dimensional layered card craft things, and everybody absolutely loves them, and they're fantastic. But it blows my mind at how detailed she is on making those things.
Nice. That's cool. Final question here. when coming home from a long tour or work or whatever the situation is, what is the first thing you do when you come home?
Hug my wife and kids. And that's usually because every time my little daughter or any of my kids see me when I get home, they just scream as loud as they can, "Daddy's home!" And then everybody just comes and hugs me, which is awesome. It's like a hero's welcome coming home. It's fantastic.
Especially when you got a family of, was it 3 kids and your wife, or is it 2 kids and
4 kids and my wife.
4 kids and oh wow,
Yeah.
that's nice. That's got to be like when, especially if you're out on the road for a good minute. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's got to feel good.
It's the best.
Nice. But it was rapid fire randomness.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those games that kind of just got born out of necessity, because it was just like I found this random question generator, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Some of the questions were a little too raunchy for the people that I was asking them to, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So it's become a staple in the podcast, so I enjoy it. But I really appreciated you coming on here. I'm glad we finally got this podcast on the books after a good 2 months of, hey, can you do this Sunday? No, I can't do Sundays. And then finally I was like, oh, I've got a Tuesday open. Does Tuesday work? Yeah. But really appreciate you coming on. It's been an absolute blast. You're welcome back on anytime. So feel free to reach out. Let me know what you got going on.
Awesome.
Other than that, if people want to reach out to you on social media or check out your music, where are you hanging out on the interwebs?
Yeah, so if you look at Matt Fawcett, F as in Frank, AWCETT, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter are kind of the main ones. I just started TikTok not long ago, so if you feel like watching somebody try to figure it out that's in their mid-30s, like, feel free to join me on there.
It's I basically, anything that I upload on Instagram Reels just automatically goes to TikTok, because I'm not going to try and you're not going to see me doing one of the dances. It's not going to fly. It's podcast clips and top 6. That's basically what I'm posting on our TikTok. So, but it works. But really appreciate you jumping on here. It's been an absolute blast. Like I said, feel free to reach out. Love to have you back anytime. Thank you to everybody that's been watching us live here on Twitch, and anybody that's watching us in the future. Hey, how you doing? Hopefully the world's still here. Really appreciate everybody supporting us. A couple of announcements really quick before we wrap this thing up. We are starting to firm down our date for our pancreatic cancer fundraiser, November 17th. We will be streaming 24 hours right here on Twitch. So if you happen to be around, make sure you give us a follow, and we'll kind of keep you updated on all that stuff. But that'll be November 17th, World Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Day. We're really excited about that. We did it last year, and we just got so much positive feedback that we had to do it again. So that's coming up. And then we got a new podcast coming out every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. We stream live right here on Twitch, and then it releases out on Spotify the next day. And if you want to support anything Live and Amplified, liveandamplified.net is the website. You can get all our socials. But once again, really appreciate everybody for tuning in and hanging out with us. Matt Fawcett, it's been an absolute blast. Before we wrap this up, give one piece of advice to the young musicians out there.
Find your reason for making music and believe that you can do it, because the only person that's going to be able to make sure you can make it is yourself. And you have to believe in yourself before anybody else is going to believe in you. So if you're going to go for it, jump in with both feet, go all after it, and make sure you're doing it for the people, not just for yourself.
Perfect. No pausing, no hesitation. So I know you really feel that one. I really appreciate you. Once again, thank you everybody for hanging out. We really appreciate you, and we will see you all on Thursday. Cool. All right.